All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rosalie. I work for Europe House Rijkenvelde, and together with DEO and Crossel, we have an Erasmus Plus partnership in which we try to inform adults on European themes. Today, we have an online debate. We have 3 experts on the new composition of the European Parliament. As everybody knows, we voted on the 9th of June this year for the European elections, and we elected in total 720 members of the European Parliament. They will help to shape the future policies of the European Union. Of the 720, we have 15 MEPs from Denmark, excuse me. We have 22 MEPs from Belgium, and we have 12 MEPs from Croatia. Today, we will discuss how they have organized themselves into different political groups and whether new dynamics could emerge compared to the previous European Parliament. Hopefully, we will gain some insight into this newly elected Parliament, and we will get a first impression. And we do this together with our 3 experts. We will start with Lien Jansen. Lien Jansen is a researcher, PhD researcher and teaching assistant at the KU Leuven here in Belgium. And her research focuses on European politics with a special focus on the European Parliament and the EU enlargement. Lien, the floor is yours and you can share your presentation if you want. You have about 10 minutes to give your pitch.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm gonna share my screen. So, can you see it? Is it? Okay.
Yes.
So hello. It's perfect. Okay. Hello everyone. I'm Lien Jansen. So I'm indeed a PhD student, especially focused on EU enlargement in the European Parliament. But of course, I also try to follow as much as the general EU elections also. So as I have only 10 minutes, I'll try to do this in 10 points, 1 on the macro level, 4 on the meso level, and then 5 on the micro level. So I will not go into much detail, but if you have questions, of course, I'm available as well as the other experts afterwards. Voilà. So first of all, going to the macro level, I observe one big macro point, and that is actually that there is still a very large pro-Ukrainian majority, counting the far left and the far right forces in the European Parliament as less or largely less pro-Ukrainian, which is in a sense remarkable after 2 years of more than 2 years of fighting. Then going to the meso level, we observe change or no change in 4 so-called P's. First of all, in politics, regarding the informal and the formal electoral rules, we don't see actually any change vis-à-vis the European elections in 2019. As, for example, as in the Spitzenkandidatensysteem, Ursula von der Leyen was still not on the CDU ballot in Germany. Also, the role of the parliament was not changed, or there was no treaty change. In terms of policies, there was a change, I argue, but the shift already took place beforehand. So not now in June, but already in spring 2023, because then with the election of the big gain of the farm and citizens movement in the Netherlands, and I think there was a change from a definitive change from more the climate-oriented policies. Think about 2019 elections with the Youth for Climate, to more traditional rights, more right-wing topics such as agriculture, economy, and security. In terms of power, we definitely saw a shift to the right. I think everybody, is aware of that, which also confirms the shift in policies, which I just described above. But I will go deeper into that in the micro level points. And then lastly, from people, obviously there's a change, as I think more than 50% are new members of the European Parliament are elected. And while the four key players, so to say, so von der Leyen, Commission President, Macron, President of France, Scholz, the Bundeskanzler from Germany, and Meloni, Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. Yeah, they are the same persons, but their internal balance of power actually changed because some won in the elections and some lost. But I will also go deeper into that in the macro level. Then turning to the micro level, I also saw 5 conclusions. First of all, regarding the turnouts, it's actually stabilized at a relatively high level, which is 51%, which looks especially from a Belgian point of view, very low because we have obligatory voting, so we have 90%. But it's actually important for the parliament to have more than 50%, as it's also gives its legitimacy vis-à-vis, for example, the Commission or the Member States, the Council. So therefore, it's important to have more than 50%. And as we see, before 2004, it was more. It was more than now even, but it is again increasing because the real low point was in 2014 with only 42% of all citizens that voted. So then, secondly, the shift to the right, which I explained also at the meso level, we saw actually we saw a shift, but no earthquake as some on the center or the left more leaning feared, so to say. And also it's, for example, in Germany and France, it there was a clear shift, a very big shift to the right. But for example, in other countries, such as the Czech Republic or in Portugal, or even in Belgium, it was not as big as expected. So yeah, there is that. And then what I also was saying about the 4 key players, so to say, we can distill 2 winners and 2 losers. The 2 winners are Tusk, the Prime Minister of Poland, and his party from EPP, so that's the Christian Democratic Party or group in the European Parliament. They clearly won, as well as Meloni with her party Brothers of Italy, which belongs to the ECR, which is the group right of the EPP and left from the more far right, Identity and Democracy, but now it's split into another group, but something right from the Christian Democrats. And the 2 losers are clearly Scholz, which is a socialist in Germany, and also Macron, which I think you're all aware that he then what he did afterwards when he clearly lost. So then he divided how I'm not sure what the words in English, but he dissoluted the parliament, or how you say it, I don't know. So voilà, 2 winners and 2 losers. If you then look at the other member states, because they're also important, we cannot distill one single message, as there is also no single election. It's still all national elections. So if you look at the Nordic countries, there was actually contrary to many other countries, there was a victory of the left parties. This is mainly due to, or experts say that it's mainly due to the fact that these parties are already tough on migration. So that's one reason that they say. And then Hungary is also very special because they actually had a very high turnout. So in 2019, it was 44%, and now it went to 60%. And it was also the first time since 2004 that Fidesz, the party of Viktor Orban, had less than 50% of the votes, which you cannot say that it was because it's still so much, but because also of their system, which gives real power to the biggest party. Actually, it is still a defeat for Fidesz. Actually. Then lastly, Romania was also a special case, as there was a cartel list between the Christian Democrats, EPP, and the Socialists, and they had also more than it was really a success. So that's maybe something also to look into for other countries in the future. And so all in all these factors actually create a much better starting position for von der Leyen to get a majority in the parliament, as the EPP won, so her party in the political group in the European Parliament, won more than 10 seats. The CDU, her party in Germany, did really well. And also her main or some ambiguous supporters or no supporters actually lost. For example, Macron, who was a bit ambivalent of whether he would vote for her or not. So he lost, Scholz lost. So actually that created a really good starting point. So if we then look at what comes next, or what happened already. So at the 16th of July, the president of the European Parliament was elected, and the committees and the chairs of the committees. This was Roberta Metsola, which was not surprising, as she's quite popular. So she gets a really high, there are a lot of MEPs voted for her. So that was actually not unexpected. At the 18th of July, then it was the election of the Commission president, which was a bit, it was interesting because normally, so it was, we all know that it was von der Leyen now, but it was actually interesting to see because in the months and weeks leading to the elections, normally von der Leyen has enough if the so-called Grand Coalition, so that's the Socialists, the Christian Democrats and the Liberals, they have normally enough votes to elect Ursula von der Leyen, but in the weeks and months leading up to this election, some of the national delegations, the national parties said within this Grand Coalition said, now we're not sure that we will vote for her. So therefore she needed to go to other groups, such as the Greens or the Meloni's or the ECR, and especially Meloni's Brothers of Italy party, to also secure their votes. And after much debate, she eventually went to the Greens, and therefore she could get elected. And then, so yeah, this is in orange because it's still a pencil date. It's not yet published when, but as the commissioners and their portfolios are then Ursula von der Leyen yesterday announced the commissioner and the portfolios, and then they need to go to some kind of oral exams in the parliament, and these oral exams, the so-called hearings, will be at the end of October, at the starting of November. I'm also hearing 4 to 12 November, something like that. And if it then, if they all get confirmed or not voted down, or it's not get delayed, then the start of the commission of the new commission mandate will be this December the 1st. But that remains to be seen if this all goes smoothly. Well, this was, I think, my contribution to this debate. I hope you learned something, and of course, I'm available for any questions later. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Linda. There was a lot of information squeezed in 10 minutes. A very, very interesting perspective with the macro level, the meso level, and the micro level. Let's move on with our next speaker. We have Roman Senninger. I hope I pronounce it well. From Denmark. He is an associate professor at the Department of Political Science in Aarhus University in Denmark. And his research focuses on the political elites and the political institutions in Europe and the interaction between the institutions. So another interesting speaker. Roman, I give the floor to you, and you have also 10 minutes.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to participate in this debate. Well, I'm representing Denmark here in this debate, but I have to start to say that I'm a fake Dane. I'm actually from Austria, living in Denmark for quite some years. But I think what is quite interesting is that the European Parliament election for me personally is one of the moments where I really feel like a Dane, because I have the opportunity to vote for the Danish members of the European Parliament. So in a way, for me, it feels like participating in a Danish election. From this personal note, I want to move on to my talk. I think I will pick up on some of the things already mentioned at the beginning and try to focus a bit on the dynamics in the European Parliament. And to begin with, I have a slide here just summarizing the results so that we are in a way all on the same page, right? So the elections have taken place in June some time ago. We all had a summer break in between. But if we look into the results, actually, I think there is a clear pattern that we can see, and that is that there actually has been a move to the right. And that was something that was heavily debated also before the election. You probably also remember headlines of a possible like right-wing takeover of the European Parliament, something that we also heard before previous EP elections. And this time, the question is, so is it real? Do we see a takeover, right? And I come back to this question, but if we look into the results for the individual parties, we clearly see that many of the right-wing parties actually have gained votes. This is true for the center-right, EPP, for the ECR, and we also have two new right-wing groups, the Patriots for Europe, including Viktor Orban's Fidesz party, and we also have the Europe of Sovereign Nations, where we have the AfD from Germany, for example, being included. And if we look on the other side of the political spectrum, we see, for example, the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the left, most of those parties having lost seats, even though the losses are not that large, as also many have assumed before the election. So, for example, looking at the Social Democrats, they have lost 2 seats, right? Which is probably something that they don't really realize in their daily work. But still, overall, a rather clear pattern. So based on this, the interesting question is now, so what is really new, right? So we have this shift to the right. What does this mean? If we forget about the party labels for 1 second and just zoom in and see how does the new European Parliament actually look like compared to the previous one, we realize the changes are maybe not that huge actually. So we see a potential majority on the right-hand side. But what we also see is that many things, so regarding the distribution for the various parties, are rather similar to 2019. So the changes are maybe not that big. And we actually see, and this is also something that was mentioned in the first input, we actually see that the center parties, the previous grand coalition, still works together. So the center holds in a way. As we can also see here, we have some clear signs for that the center parties, they are still working together. Yet what is quite interesting is that the center parties, they have apparently new members. So suddenly we also talk about the Green Party when we talk about the center parties in the European Parliament. So they're in a way getting part of the EP mainstream. That is kind of one of the developments that I would emphasize here. And this is definitely also something that has to do with the developments we have seen over the last 5 years with the Green Deal legislation. So green politics have become a politics of the center, and therefore I think it makes good sense. The Green Party in a way also feel like we're now part of the center. And even though we don't have the votes, so it's not a roll call that is publicly available, we can be pretty sure that quite many Green members of Parliament have actually voted for Ursula von der Leyen and have in that way contributed to a good start for the new Commission, because Ursula von der Leyen received 401 votes, if I'm not mistaken, and this is a kind of a clear sign for a stable support for the new president of the European Commission. Yet, with this new center, there are also like new partnerships coming up, and the big question is, how long will this center actually be stable? So can those new partners in a way, so the Social Democrats, the Green Party, the Liberals, and the EPP, and maybe in some instances even the ECR, can they actually work together and stay with providing this stable and large majority? Looking into a bit into the future, we see that there are actually major decisions coming up for the European Parliament. We have just yesterday we got a good sense of what the new Commission will provide in terms of proposals, and we have a good idea that there will come many proposals with regard to competitiveness, climate, technology, but also migration. And if we look into the various parties in the European Parliament, I think we also can get a sense that it will be difficult to hold centers together. Because in many of those questions, the European Parliament, the European People's Party and the Green Party, they have very different positions. And for them, it will be quite difficult to agree. And I would not be surprised if we realize over time that the European People's Party will also look a bit more to the right when finding majorities. I think the EPP will find out that it can be quite difficult to hold on to the center parties, and therefore I think we might see some situations where they will shift rightwards and see if it's possible to find some majorities with those other parties. We also have major decisions coming up on the budget. Also here, something where it will be quite difficult for the center to hold together, because I think the Green Party, the Social Democrats, and on the other hand, the EPP, ECR, they have very different perceptions on how the money should be spent on. There will be a new budget circle starting in 2027. Usually it starts a year before, so 2026, which is rather soon. So this is definitely something to follow, and also a good opportunity for analysts and observers to see what are the new dynamics in the European Parliament. So what is going on? And finally, we also, I think, we need to remember that even though today we focus on the European Parliament, we need to remember that Parliament is only one arena for potential conflicts. And the Parliament is also an institution that is more like responsive than actually the one that is active, because it is a parliament that is not allowed to develop its own proposals. So it can only react to what the European Commission is coming up with. And here, when we look into the new commissioners and the distribution within the European Commission, we also see actually that the new European Commission will be a rather right-wing European Commission. And I think it would be naive to believe that this will not show in the proposals they're coming up with. So I think we will see instances where the proposals are actually quite to the right, and then they move into the European Parliament, and then we will see that the Green Party wants to do lots of changes, whereas the EPP and ECR, they're probably more okay with the proposals from the Commission. So I think this is also a setup for quite some conflict for this kind of new center that we have seen here at the beginning of the EP. A final word on Denmark. So we have 15 members of the European Parliament, and I don't know how it is for the most of the Danes in the audience. For me, also, it is like we have heard now a lot during the campaign, and we just got to know our candidates. And then they move to Brussels and suddenly they disappear, right? We have no idea what they're actually doing. And it's quite difficult to follow up and see, so what kind of committees are they assigned to? What are they working on? Yet if one does some research, one can actually see that there are some candidates who are actually quite big profiles in the new European Parliament. We have for the first time in Denmark, MEP being a vice president of the European Parliament, Christel Schaldemose from the Social Democrats. which gives some prestige to this individual. And in addition to that, we have Kira Marie Peter Hansen from the Greens, who is again also in the top of the party and quite influential in the party group, in the Green Party group. So also from a Danish perspective, there is actually much to look forward to and to follow, because we have some high-profile Danish politicians being involved in the decisions in the European Parliament. Let's hope that the media is also aware of that and will also report a bit more on their activities as they have done previously. I think I will stop here, and I look forward to the debate and discussion later on. So I give over to Mario.
Thank you very much, Roman. Another, but also very interesting perspective, especially with the connectivity between the political institutions. Indeed, let's not forget that the parliament is only one arena, let's say, of conflict. We also have the Commission, we also have the Council of the European Union. So that was a very refreshing point of view also. Last but not least, I will introduce to you our speaker from Croatia, Mario Muntar. He is an assistant professor at the EU Public Policy at the Faculty of Political Science in Zagreb. And his research focuses on the EU social policy, the green transition, socio-economic governance in the EU, and the Europeanization of public policy. So also a lot of research, let's say. Mario, the floor is yours for also 10 minutes.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for the invitation, and for the previous speakers for laying out the tracks for my final remarks. So starting with a personal note, as the previous speakers as well, I come from a country that had the lowest turnout in the EP elections this time around, so 21%, which is for the in the broader sense quite displeasing, despite the general trend of stable rise in turnout generally, and as the EU average is around 51. So I will try to I will not have slides, but lay out a couple of theses to put them on the table for you to chew on them a bit, maybe in the discussion. So I'll give you sort of a broader perspective, because we did not only have EP elections this time around, but as the cycle closes and the new one comes up, we also have changes in other positions, key positions in the European Union. We will have a new European Council president. Some of the executive roles have also changed. The new commission is coming in, so a lot of things to swallow. So maybe to start with the institutional perspective, what is going on? I would say that this thesis that the EU is in a permanent state of crisis still holds and will hold in the future in this term as well. And I would rather note that the relations between institutions in the EU, so these interinstitutional relations, will again be in a mode of crisis, because we've already seen in the last term that things have started to become a bit more complicated than it used to be. First things first, it's I would say we see a crisis of policy making. So the tradition of solving policy issues through so-called trilogues, where the European Parliament comes together with the Council, so representatives of the member states, is in a crisis. Usually when you seal a deal between these two institutions, things do not open up again. But in the last couple of years, we see that it's not over until the last member state, or usually the more powerful ones, say it's over. So we saw different policy files being opened up after they've already been negotiated between the institutions. Think about the well-known example of the ban on combustion engines, then renewable energy, and the nature restoration law that has already been discussed from my previous speakers. I would also say we see a crisis of governance, and it will be quite interesting with the new commission to see how different people work together. One obvious example is Raffaele Fitto from Italy, which comes from this right-leaning party group ECR. He might become a Trojan horse, and we'll see how he fares in these hearings, in these EP hearings that are to follow. We should know that it's always a couple of people who fall out after these hearings. He might be one of the victims. We also see with the new commission coming in and the new outline of the commission that there are many interlinked responsibilities within the structure of the European Commission, which means many people work on similar topics from a different angle. So it'd be quite difficult to solve this conundrum, governance conundrum, how different personalities and different perspectives, especially political perspectives, will clash or be resolved. So I would maybe highlight one such example, which is we have Teresa Ribera from Spain, which will be this executive vice president for competition, and also the whole story about the green transition. But on the other hand, we will have a commissioner, Wopke Hoekstra, who is a Dutch commissioner who has a radically different view of how the green transition should come about. So there will be some tensions. And finally, on this point, we see a crisis of leadership in a sort, because both Germany and France are witnessing sort of a declining influence in Europe, which creates this space for von der Leyen as the Commission president to stay the queen of Europe, as she's sometimes referred to. And she's put with her last term and now in the second term, she has this new model of political leadership. She tries to concentrate power in the Commission in her hands, and we'll see how member states will look at that this time around. Second of all, and related to this, I would say that we see a presidentialization of the European Commission. That's really clear, and this should probably deepen in the second term. This is not a new process. It started with former Commission presidents, Jose Manuel Barroso, but then also with Jean-Claude Juncker. But von der Leyen is now trying to reconfigure the Commission to make it a bit more centralized in a way, and more difficult for individual commissioners to have autonomy over their portfolios, right? So she has these roles of executive vice presidents, 6 of them this time around. She has direct lines of command for very important portfolios like budget and interinstitutional relations. And she made some very peculiar decisions this time around, which, as was mentioned, I work a lot on social policy. After more than 50 years of having a specific Directorate General, or call it a ministry for employment and social policy, this time around we will not have a commissioner designated for this DG, which is quite remarkable, but there will be an executive vice president responsible for this. So this presidentialization, basically, we could see that in the last couple of weeks, von der Leyen was trying to strong arm some member states into changing commissioner candidates. We also see that she's trying to sort of set or lay the tracks of the policy direction with the mission letters sent to individual designated candidates. So all in all, less autonomy for commissioners. And Another thing I wanted to mention, but not go into too much detail because my previous colleagues have referred to this trend of a radical shift to the right in the European Parliament. I would just like to add that from recent research we see that these radical right groups in the European Parliament they have a lot of internal heterogeneity. So especially when it comes to voting on issues where their voice is not that important. So when they're not pivotal in the outcomes of specific legislative files, they have a lot of heterogeneity. But given the fact that we might see more instances of their voting influence increasing in this European Parliament, we might see that on some issues like as we said, climate, agriculture, but also then defense and rule of law, we might see a complication in the European Parliament actually reaching a specific position on policies, just because of these rifts that have been created. Some of the final points that I wanted to make with regards to policy, I would say that the EU is now in a competitiveness mode, which again is not new. We saw that in the Lisbon Agenda in the 2000s. But now I would say we see this narrative of competitiveness on steroids, and the recent report by Mario Draghi, which was created at the request of Ursula von der Leyen, gives this tone, and she already said yesterday it's all about competitiveness. So I would say we will see a trend that started before the end of the last European Parliament term, which is a clash between our strives to decarbonize the economy and protect the environment on the other hand. So we see this clash between climate versus environment, which is quite a interesting development. And in this whole process, I would say the Green Group has made a very interesting move because in exchange for relevance in the European Parliament and in compensation for the electoral decline that it saw in these last European Parliament elections, they've sort of become complicit in shifting the green transition agenda to the right. That practically means that the issues of clean technologies for decarbonization have taken precedent over more classical issues of environmental protection. I would conclude with final thought, which from a citizen perspective, very important. I would say it's a make or break moment for Europe in terms of institutional reform and democratization of policymaking. In order to counter the rise of Euroscepticism, it will be very interesting to see how this participation conundrum will be solved. Many political parties, they advocate for greater involvement of citizens in the policymaking process, be it through citizen panels or other ways of including people. But it's still a open question how these newly more fragmented European Parliament and a more right-wing European Council this time around will come to a final conclusion on how to solve this issue. And this is not the only democratic issue that that the EU will be struggling with in the coming years. We have to solve the issue of enlargement. We have to solve the issue of how to create a new budget, what to do with the next gen EU as a response to the Corona crisis. Will we continue with this or not? What about the Spitzenkandidaten process? What about transnational lists for EP elections? So that's all on the table, and I think that it's now more than ever it's time to resolve some of these issues. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. for your pitch also, with a lot of focus on the Commission. Also, it was a new refreshing input in this debate, and then also some nice statements on which we can build the debate. Now I give the floor to you all. If you have questions that you want to ask our experts, you can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand. If you put on reactions, then you can like raise your hand with Zoom. And then I will give you the floor, and then you can ask your question. I saw that there's already one in the chat. Roman, one for you, I think. Oh no, Mario. A question from Jan from Denmark. He says, my question is about the Green Deal. To what extent is the impact affected by the consideration that it must be implemented in a way that does not impose too much additional cost on citizens and businesses in less affluent EU countries? Maybe a short answer, as it's not about newly elected parliament itself. Mario, maybe you can check the question again in the chat and then provide us a short answer.
Yeah, I can't see it in the chat box, but you know, maybe digest what you just said. It will be, you know, quite difficult to resolve this issue. But one of the reasons why, for instance, the Greens in the European Parliament were more willing to sort of side with the center this time around was this promise by von der Leyen that she will create a much bigger social climate fund and just transition fund, which are meant to sort of appease the citizens and bring them on board with the green transition, right? Because when you look at the things that will very soon happen if new measures or policies are not introduced, you know, the price of gas, the price of petrol will rise by approximately 10 cents, euro cents, right? For some member states and citizens, this will be a huge problem, and then, you know, all hands will be pointed at the European Union, and then you have again the EU as a scapegoat for all the problems that citizens see, and that's just perpetuates this process of greater Euroscepticism. So I would say it's good that that von der Leyen has put Teresa Ribera as the executive vice president, which will oversee these issues of a fair transition, because she will certainly try to make sure that these existing policies are bolstered and made sure that we have a just transition, you know, whatever that means, you know, for you know, an ordinary citizen, but indeed it will be very difficult to move forward, right?
Right, thank you very much. Is there somebody else with some questions for our experts on the topic? I see something. A question in the chats, maybe for all the experts. How will the new right-wing groups change the political landscape in, for example, the Ukraine questions and the climate policy? So what will be the effects of this new right-wing group? I saw that there are like two new groups, the Patriots for Europe and Europe of Sovereign Nations. Maybe one of you also knows the difference, because I personally don't know the difference. Maybe I can first start with Lynn. Yes?
Yes, indeed. So, very interesting question. Maybe first, indeed, so in the previous legislative cycle, you had the Identity and Democracy group, which was basically the far right group, so to say. And this has now split into two different groups, as you already mentioned. So indeed, I have to look also for the exact parties, but actually it is basically the one is the Patriots for Europe group is made by Orban, actually. And there you can say that actually Europe, you have the Patriots for Europe group, and then you have the Europe of Sovereign Nations group. And this is seen as much more, even more extreme, so to say, than the Patriots for Europe group. So you have a kind of, and in the most extreme group of the most far right group, you have AfD mainly. So it's AfD and then some other parties that are not even more to the right than the Patriots for Europe group, which is then Orban, so Fidesz. But you also have Chega in Portugal. You have the Vox in Spain. So all the big parties basically from the Identity and Democracy group, except for AfD then. And how it will change, I think there is continuity, but also discontinuity. For example, I think that because there's still the center holds, so to say. So I think also for example, the support for Ukraine, it's in the short term, it will be okay because the ECR also supports Ukraine, and but in the long term, there will be divisions, as already mentioned, I think by Roman or by Mario, I don't know anymore, divisions within the parties, because it is also cost money. And that's the thing, I think the budget will really divide the parliaments. And so I think also where we can see a change, or how this more the shift to the right change the policies, is mainly in climate and environmental policies. But yeah, as already a lot of legislation has already passed, and now it's really in the implementation stage. I think it will be okay because there is already a lot of legislation passed. But especially immigration, I think there will be more support for these so-called extraterritorial arrangements with third countries for the asylum processes. So I think migration and then further legislation for climate and environmental policies are the main points, I think. But let's see what the others say.
Yes, Roman, maybe you can add something to that.
Yeah, just a very brief follow-up. So coming back to this kind of possible far-right takeover of the European Parliament that many were talking about before the European Parliament election. I mean, if we really look into this development, I would say that quite many parties in the center, but also on the left, they need to be happy about that the topic of Ukraine and Russia was actually so salient, because it is the one issue that really divides the parties on the right. Without that topic, I think something like a far-right supergroup in the European Parliament would be much more likely, where we have the ECR and the Patriots and the Sovereignists. I don't think it would be like super easy, but this is kind of the one issue in political science. We often talk about wedge issues that really kind of split parties internally up into different camps, and this is kind of the topic that really splits the far right up. And that is also what that was one of the reasons, one of the obstacles why this debate about building a supergroup was soon over. And therefore, we see this kind of more heterogeneous, as Mario pointed to, that groups where they have differences and conflicts within that group. So the topic is actually one reason why we still see that many things work in the same manner as they did in the previous term.
All right, thank you. Maybe we can move on to the next question, if it's okay, Mario, or do you want to add something? I see that Jan, you have raise your hand, so you can take the floor and ask your question.
Yeah, I think it's a question for Leen or Roman or both of them. Leen mentioned that the losers of the EP election was Scholz and Macron, and I think Roman said something about that you will see in the council too that the right-wing parties will get more representative, more dominating. And now we've been used to for years that Germany and France were the dominating countries, and that Merkel and Macron M&Ms were the dominating people, politicians. Now, when they lose power, when they lose voters, will there be another country's leaders who will go into taking more power? I don't know, Poland, Italy, Spain. Who do you see going in and fulfilling some of the vacuum that this election leaves, especially Stolz? Both Macron and Scholz will not have the dominating positions as they have had so far.
Interesting question. So it was maybe start again with Lien and then Roma.
Yes, indeed. So indeed, in the European integration history, so to say, it's always the Franco-German axis who leads the European integration, and as they both are indeed now a bit weakened and also don't collaborate as good as it was before, maybe. I think we can observe a general shift to this more Central and Eastern Europe in terms of power also, because as you, for example, as you could see in the European Commission and in the portfolio allocation, you can actually see that a lot of big portfolios actually went to Central and Eastern Europe, and also, for example, Kaja Kallas, but also some economic portfolios. So I think it's also natural to see that for example, Poland will play a big role, as Tusk is also really was also a winner of the election. So I think you have to look for Poland in this case. And I think it's also a natural evolution that the axis maybe shifts a bit to the east, so to say, or the power.
Roma?
Yeah, very, very briefly, I think Mario probably also has something to say about this. So I don't want to go into kind of particular countries, but what I think it is that this development shows is that in order to be powerful at the EU level, you need to have kind of a strong basis at home. I think we have really now seen that this is the case with the examples from France and Germany, because in a way you can't be powerful on the European Council, around the European Council table, and say this is what we're doing, when all the other countries around know that one of your coalition parties at home is against what you just said. So you will have problems actually convincing your home base. This I think really plays out now, and maybe this is also telling us about something about who will actually have more power in the future, because it might be those countries that actually have stable majorities at home where they can talk with one voice and have a clear message. I think this could be something that we will see more often in the future. I stop here, Mario.
Yeah, maybe just 2 sentences. I would agree that these internal political struggles that both Germany and France have complicate their position on the EU stage. But one of the sort of iron laws of EU policymaking, I think, will still stand, and that's unless Germany and France agree to a compromise, nothing will happen. So on all these big issues that are in front of the EU in the next couple of years, the decision that they have to make, unless Germany and France find common ground, no change happens. And we've seen examples of that over and over again, because it's very often we see Germany advocated for one position and France is exactly on the opposite initially, and then they somehow converge to the center, which creates this space for other countries to agree. So in a nutshell, their political problems domestically affect the ability to reach compromise at EU level, but it will still hold true that it will have to be France and Germany by default to agree on common stances and positions in order for the EU to go forward.
All right, thank you very much. Then we have another question in the chat from Peter Jan. He is asking, is the current division of the European Parliament beneficial to Draghi's report and what he wants to achieve with it, yes or no, and why? I think, Mario, you already mentioned it, Draghi's report, so maybe you can start answering this question. Is the current division of the European Parliament beneficial to his report, yes or no, and why?
Well, I'd say that there's in the EP, there's the reception of the Draghi report has been sort of say lukewarm in a sense, and no big opposition, but no big celebration at the same time. And this is because, you know, in general, there's this agreement that, you know, the EU has to become more powerful on the global stage and needs to become more sovereign in the transition, you know, towards green technologies, use of AI, and so on. And one very clever thing that Draghi did is, as he said, you know, the way forward to increase Europe's competitiveness is in increasing productivity, but not by slashing the rights of workers and by lowering the social standards that are inherited in the EU, so the EU social model, but by you know, investing in you know, research and development and new innovations. So in that sense, you know, the moderate voices in the EU certainly look at the Draghi report favorably, but it's always going to be, you know, the far left and far right options that might put the report into question. But we'll see, you know, how much of the report will actually be in the pipeline. The Commission has already adopted, and the mission letters and in the political guidelines, many of the, you know, visions that are put there. But it's at the end, it will all be about the money. You know how much money has to be put into it. Draghi says 800 you know, billion euros a year. Which will be hard to swallow for some countries, right?
I think the statement at the end, it's all about the money. It's applicable for multiple policies in the EU. Lien or Roman, do you want to add something to that question, or can we move on to maybe a last question? Because I see we only have 1 more minute in this debate. So do we have one more question or not? Otherwise, I think we can finish our online debate. No more questions? All right, then I will end the recording.